One night, in an abusive family, a father beat his daughter and locked her in a storage shed. The atmosphere was heavy, and outside, rain poured relentlessly. Meanwhile, a boy was frantically searching for his younger sister. When he finally found her, he softly called out, "Suzune," but was shocked to see that one of her eyes had turned red. His heart ached at the sight of her battered appearance. Despite her suffering, Suzune was still worried about implicating her brother, urging him to leave, but he refused. Instead, he decided to take her and escape, grabbing Suzune's hand. He ran through the pouring rain. Eventually, they found shelter in an abandoned house deep in the forest. They huddled together, trying to keep warm against the biting cold. As time passed, the temperature dropped further, and the boy slowly lost consciousness. In that fleeting moment, he saw a man appear. The stranger said, "If you have nowhere to go, come with me." When the boy awoke, it was already morning. He heard Suzune's warm voice beside him. Realizing that he was being carried on the man's back, he glanced around in confusion. The man eventually set him down and told them that they would walk the rest of the way upon arrival. The man introduced the place as a village famous for sword forging. When they reached his house, a young girl ran out excitedly to greet him. Seeing a stranger, Suzune instinctively clung to her brother. Noticing this, the man gently told his daughter, "I found them on my way home. From now on, they will live with us. What do you think?" The girl happily agreed and introduced herself as Shirayuki. The boy then spoke, "I'm Genta." Suzune, still a bit shy, hesitated, but Shirayuki cheerfully welcomed them, saying, "From now on, we're family." That night, while everyone was asleep, Genta heard a faint sound and woke up. He saw the man quietly polishing his sword. Curious, he asked, "Are you a warrior?" The man smiled and shook his head. "No, I am a guardian of the Shrine Maiden and protect what is most precious to me." At that moment, Genta stared at the gleaming sword, as if realizing something deep within. The next morning, the group went to a nearby stream, splashing around in the refreshing water. Time passed quickly, and as the sun set, casting a crimson glow across the sky, they bid farewell to a new friend they had met that day on the way home. Genta suddenly asked Shirayuki, "Your mother is a shrine maiden, isn't she?" "Her name is Yotaka. She's the one who arranged for us to stay here, right?" Shirayuki nodded. "That's right. My mother currently resides at the ancient shrine on the mountain peak." She explained that her mother was the shrine maiden of the fire god. Only the village chief and her father were allowed to meet her. People say shrine maidens must remain pure and untouched by the mortal world. "It's been years since I last saw her," after sharing her story. They continued walking home over time. Genta trained under the man's guidance, learning swordsmanship. However, no matter how much he practiced, he felt that his progress was slow and began to lose confidence. Seeing this, the man reassured him, "There's no need to be discouraged. Becoming a swordsman isn't something that happens overnight." He then placed a warm hand on Genta's head, his gentle gaze soothing the boy's frustration. Genta smiled faintly and bowed his head in gratitude. Soon after, the man left on an errand. Shirayuki swiftly ran over to hand him his sword and waved him goodbye with a bright smile. Then, she turned to Genta, gently patting his head in encouragement. Genta felt slightly annoyed. She was younger than him yet acted as if she were the older one. Seeing his reaction, Shirayuki burst into laughter. Just then, Suzune woke up, rubbing her sleepy eyes as she wandered in search of her brother. Genta, still flustered, fumbled awkwardly, making both girls giggle uncontrollably. They both reached out their hands toward him and said, "Come on, let's go have breakfast together." Meanwhile, in an ancient shrine, a group of swordsmen and village elders had gathered for an important meeting. A young warrior knelt respectfully and reported his success in slaying demons. With deep reverence, he said, "Even when facing a demon, I am not shaken. Thank you, Princess Maiden, for praising my accomplishment of the mission." The young man humbly admitted that he had only done his best. Princess listened quietly before lowering her voice and asking if there was anything unusual about the demons this time. The young man immediately reported that this time, the demons had the ability to transform into humans. Currently, everyone was trying to infiltrate their territory to uncover the reason behind this phenomenon. A seasoned warrior fell into deep thought before making a guess. Perhaps the demon's true target this time was none other than the Shrine Maiden Princess. The atmosphere grew tense. According to legend, if a 1,000-year-old demon consumed the fresh liver of a shrine maiden within a sacred temple, it would gain unparalleled power. If that were to happen, it would be a disaster. No one wished to witness. Another young man spoke up in disagreement, arguing that it was merely a legend and that no one had ever verified its authenticity. However, the old swordsman had solid evidence. Long ago, the shrine maiden Yokaze had her liver devoured by a demon in exchange for their life. It was only thanks to Motoharu's sacrifice that the demon was finally sealed away. Still, there were differing opinions. Some speculated that the target this time might not be the Shrine Maiden, but rather Yarai, the legendary sword passed down through generations. Forged by ancient ancestors, it had withstood 1,000 years without rusting. As a divine blade, it was likely just as coveted by demons. The tension in the room continued to rise. But just then, a young man named Kiyomasa suddenly laughed, lightly slapping his thigh before reminding everyone not to worry too much. After all, there were 2 Shrine Maiden Guardians this time, and one of them was an exceptional warrior. Genta felt like he was being mocked. Time had passed rather quickly. Now he'd grown up, it seemed. The elderly leader glanced around and noticed that everyone looked exhausted, signaling that the discussion had run its course. He suggested concluding the meeting. One by one, everyone bowed to the Shrine Maiden and left. Only Genta remained seated. Seeing this, the Shrine Maiden stepped outside. She was a beautiful, regal young woman, yet her demeanor carried a playful charm. Upon seeing Genta, she immediately scolded him for calling her Princess Shrine Maiden, saying it sounded too distant. Instead, she wanted him to call her as he used to before, helpless. Genta called her name, Shirayuki. She smiled gently, her eyes filled with warmth. Now that's better, she said. Suddenly, she apologized, saying she always relied on him too much. Genta looked at the girl before him. What was wrong with a Shrine Maiden depending on her guardian? But before he could respond, she playfully added, "Then, I guess I should thank you instead." Hearing her coy tone, Genta suspected something was up. Shirayuki hesitated for a moment before revealing that Suzune was also here today. Then, she took his hand and led him forward. Pointing inside the room, where a little girl was sound asleep under the table, Genta stepped closer and gently shook his sister awake. The moment she saw him, Suzune's face lit up with joy as she threw herself into his arms, but Genta only sighed. Sitting down as he patiently explained that this wasn't a place she was allowed to be, Suzune pouted and huffed. "But aren't you here too?" That response made Genta sigh again as he helplessly held his head. Being an older brother was truly difficult. Before Genta could react, Suzune had already darted away, leaving him with a helpless expression. Seeing this, Shirayuki chuckled and gently comforted him. Meanwhile, Suzune wandered outside alone, looking for something to play with. While the elder from earlier sought out the Shrine Maiden Princess, he returned with a serious expression and began questioning her about some important matters. To avoid interruptions, he asked Genta to leave. At first, Genta had no intention of going, but when even Shirayuki told him to go, he had no choice but to comply, leaving the two to their private conversation as he walked away. Memories of the past between him and Shirayuki resurfaced, standing together by the lake. Gazing at the moonlit water, she had smiled softly, her eyes shimmering, and quietly declared that she would become a Shrine Maiden. Genta was puzzled at the time, but she explained that she loved this place and wanted to take on part of the family's responsibility. However, that also meant they might never meet again. Hearing this, Genta didn't hesitate for a moment. He had promised that he would become a strong swordsman, her guardian, ready to defeat any demon that dared to harm his little princess and protect her with all his strength back in the present. As Genta stepped outside, he was unaware that deep in the forest, a sinister woman had appeared alongside her demon. Their target had been set for a while now, none other than the Shrine Maiden Princess. Returning home, Suzune's eyes sparkled with happiness upon seeing her brother. Early the next morning, Genta had gone out to get some fresh air. Before long, Suzune woke up as well. Seeing her awake, Genta casually mentioned that Shirayuki would be visiting soon. Overjoyed, Suzune jumped into his arms. However, as she did, the bandage covering her eye loosened, revealing a crimson-red pupil. Genta gently reminded her to fix it. The two then basked in the happiness of the present. Meanwhile, Shirayuki had secretly slipped out of the shrine early in the morning to find Genta. She had even dressed up beautifully, hoping he would spend the entire day with her. Her request surprised Genta a little. Suzune, ever the playful one, teased that it had been a long time since the three of them had breakfast together. And so, they sat down for a meal. During breakfast, Suzune criticized Genta's cooking, saying it didn't taste very good. Genta, seeing that she was eating just fine despite complaining, scolded her, pretending he would punish her, but Suzune confidently declared that he wouldn't dare hit her. And of course, she was right. Genta could never bring himself to hit his little sister. At most, he could only scold her. The two girls continued to gang up on Genta, making fun of him to the point where he felt utterly helpless. Yet, he could do nothing about it. After breakfast, Genta and Shirayuki set off together. Suzune, still cheerful, seemed particularly happy. Curious, Genta asked why. Suzune grinned and said, "Because you get to spend the whole day with Shirayuki. You're so lucky, and if you're happy, that makes me happy too." Bidding farewell to Suzune, Genta and Shirayuki left, leaving her home alone. As they walked through the village, whispers spread quickly. A beautiful woman walking beside Genta was a rare sight, causing quite a stir. Few in the village had ever seen such a stunning young lady before they arrived at a dumpling shop. Shirayuki, despite being a shrine maiden, had spent most of her life on the mountain and was unknown to the villagers. As soon as she sat down, she eagerly ordered 10 dumplings to eat to her heart's content. However, Genta immediately corrected her, saying they would only have 2 dumplings and tea. Shiryuki's excitement instantly deflated after the waitress left. Shiryuki whispered, "She doesn't seem to recognize me." "Huh?" Genta responded, "Well, it has been a long time. It's no surprise she doesn't remember you." That waitress was none other than Chito's, their childhood friend, the same girl they used to bathe in the river with back then. A little while later, Chito's brought out a plate of dumplings along with rice cakes, Genta's usual favorites. She seemed to remember his preferences quite well, but standing in front of him, she looked somewhat flustered. However, Genta paid no attention to her hesitation. The only thing on his mind at the moment was his role as the princess's guardian as they ate. Genta and Shiryuki reminisced while gazing at the village. Genta remarked that nothing had changed much, while Shiryuki expressed her hope that they could protect it forever that afternoon. They arrived at a secluded stream. Unexpectedly, Shiryuki turned to Genta and sincerely thanked him for spending the entire day with her. Then, with a soft voice, she said that this was the place where everything began. And today, there was something she needed to tell him. The atmosphere grew tense and silent. Shiryuki gazed at Genta for a long time before finally speaking. "I'm going to marry Kiyomasa." Genta stood frozen. She continued, explaining that the village elder had visited her yesterday. He had warned that if demons were targeting her, then, to prevent history from repeating itself, she must give birth to an heir. Kiyomasa, being a guardian of the shrine maidens and possessing the pure Kadono bloodline, was the ideal choice. Moreover, he was destined to become the next village chief. This marriage was for the sake of Kadono's people, and Shiryuki had agreed to it, but despite her duty, she wanted to be honest with Genta. She loved him. Genta, still listening, remained speechless. She admitted that she had once thought about running away with him, abandoning everything, but she knew Genta would never agree to such a thing. Genta silently acknowledged that she was right. Shiryuki hesitated before asking, "Do you not love me?" Genta exhaled slowly before responding, "I swore to protect the shrine maiden, not Shiryuki herself. Since I was a child, I've dedicated myself to mastering the sword. I've always respected your decision to become a shrine maiden. If I were to choose to stay by your side and run away together, it would mean denying the path I've walked and disregarding the choice you made for yourself." Hearing this, Shiryuki nodded. "That's exactly what I thought," she said with a bittersweet smile. "It seems we both share the same resolve." Despite the pain, she knew there was nothing she could do. She had chosen to become a shrine maiden so that she could love him forever. Even if it meant from afar. From this moment on, she would no longer be able to face Genta as she once did, though he knew this wouldn't change. Genta remained firm. "I will continue to protect you, just as I always have," he declared unbeknownst to them. At home, Suzune curled up in a corner, chewing on her nails out of anxiety. At the same time, alarming news spread. 2 demons were approaching the village. Genta was immediately assigned to battle them before they could arrive after the meeting ended. As Genta was about to leave, Kiyomasa suddenly grabbed his collar, his expression furious. "Why didn't you say anything when you knew all along?" he demanded. Genta calmly met his gaze and replied, "Because I did it for the peace of the princess and the safety of our people." Hearing this, Kiyomasa clenched his jaw and muttered, "You must be insane." Then he released his grip. Genta merely smoked and said, "Yeah, I think so too." With that, he turned and walked away. Meanwhile, Suzune, still alone at home, suddenly her mysterious woman appears. The same demon that was in the forest earlier. At the same moment, Genta was wandering through the woods when a demon ambushed him. Without hesitation, he swung his sword and charged it at the massive creature, retaliated with fierce attacks. Its claws scraped against Genta's face, leaving a deep wound, but he remained unwavering. Taking a step back, he gathered his strength and struck with a powerful slash. His blade connected with the demon's arm, sending sparks flying as it clashed against the monster's hardened bones. For a brief moment, the creature resisted, but then its arm was severed entirely. Blood splattered across the ground. Yet, despite the grievous injury, the beast showed no sign of fear. The demon slowly picked up its severed arm and began speaking. It acknowledged that humans were fascinating creatures. Demons had lived for thousands of years, while human lives passed in the blink of an eye. And yet, human spirit endured through the inheritance of will and skill. Finally, the demon asked Genta, "Why do you wield your sword with strength that defies natural laws? What exactly do you intend to cut down?" Genta paid no mind to the demon's words. He knew only one thing: this sword existed to protect the people he cherished. Meanwhile, at home, the eerie woman approached Suzune. She whispered, "Do you know who I am?" Suzune replied honestly, "You're a demon." "Aren't you?" The woman chuckled. "That's right, I'm a demon, just like you." Hearing that, Suzune immediately objected, insisting that she was human. The demon continued, her voice smooth and coaxing, "You love your brother dearly, don't you?" She smirked. "Your brother managed to keep you alive and care for you so well that you even believe you're human." Suzune, thrilled to hear someone praise her brother, beamed with pride. To her, he was everything. Seizing the moment, the demon tried to tempt her. "Lend me your power, Suzune. There are those who wish to harm your brother." But Suzune refused without hesitation. My brother can take care of himself, the demon sighed, as if disappointed. You're not being honest with yourself. Then, with a knowing smirk, she placed a single finger against Suzun's forehead. Instantly, an image flashed before Suzun's eyes. She saw the princess, stripped bare, throwing herself into the arms of a strange man, their bodies entangled in passion. Suzun recoiled in disgust, feeling her stomach churn, but beyond the revulsion, she noticed something that sent a chill down her spine. The man was not her brother. A deep ache twisted inside her chest. She shook her head, unwilling to believe what she was seeing. The demon's voice slithered into her ears. This is my power, clairvoyance. I can show others glimpses of the future I have seen. Suzun clenched her fists, still refusing to believe. This is just an illusion, the demon chuckled. Then why don't you go confirm it for yourself? Trembling, Suzun hesitated for a moment, before, at last, reaching out and grasping the demon's hand. Back in the forest, the battle raged on. Genta was sent flying into a rushing stream. As he steadied himself, he locked eyes with the demon and demanded, why do demons kill humans? Were you born knowing nothing but slaughter? The demon shook its head. No, I have my reasons for being here. Then, with a surge of power, it enlarged its remaining arm into a massive, sinewy limb. Now, come at me. Genta took a deep breath, then lunged at the demon, aiming to slice through its neck in a single, decisive strike. But the demon was faster. With a single devastating punch, it shattered Genta's arm. Pain fled through Genta's body, but he refused to back down. Gritting his teeth, he swung his sword once more, only for the demon to catch it in its jaws, shattering the blade. The agony was excruciating, yet Genta didn't fall. Suppressing the pain, he seized the broken blade and, with every ounce of strength he had left, drove it deep into the demon's chest. Blood gushed from the wound. The monster's massive form shuddered, then finally collapsed. Genta had won, or so he thought, lying in the river. The dying demon wrapped out a final revelation. I have fulfilled my purpose here. She, too, possessed clairvoyance. With a weak chuckle, it continued, she have seen it, the future. 170 years from now, a king will rise to lead the demons. The demon god will descend. Then, the demon's voice dropped to a whisper, and the demon god, he's already here. Genta's heart pounded. Here, in Kadono, a sudden realization struck him. His entire body tensed. He could feel that Suzun was in danger. He turned to leave, but before he could move, the dying demon used its severed arm to grab Genta by the head, refusing to let him go. Meanwhile, at the shrine, the princess struggled beneath Kiyamasa's weight. She wasn't ready for this. She fought back, but Kiyamasa sneered. Isn't this the perfect opportunity? Do you want Genta to hear your moans? Hearing that, the priestess froze. Silent tears slipped down her face just as the princess and Kiyamasa were about to begin, their goal being to conceive an heir to protect the village. A sudden interruption shattered the moment. The demon tore down the curtain with a sinister grin as she had promised. This was the truth. Following closely behind her was a small figure. Suzun. The princess froze in shock. Meanwhile, Suzun stood stiffly, seemingly paralyzed by the revelation. Her mind reeled as she silently questioned the priestess. Why did my brother mistreat you at that moment? Genta, still recovering from the battle, suddenly realized something. His arm had healed, and the demon had vanished. Then, a chilling realization struck him. Suzun was in danger. Without a second thought, he bolted toward the village from afar. He saw flames engulfing everything. Rushing home, he found that his sister was missing. Panic set in as he frantically searched for her. Meanwhile, at the shrine, Suzun wept uncontrollably. Why did you do this? She demanded the priestess. Shirayuki hesitated, struggling to find the right words. She could see Suzun's pain and had no idea where to begin. Perhaps, deep down, you've always had feelings for your brother, but you're trapped in such a young body. Finally, Shirayuki spoke. I am now a priestess. This is the only way I can return his love. But Suzun could not understand. All she knew was that the person she had trusted had betrayed her. She had always believed that Shirayuki would bring her brother happiness. But now, this Shirayuki could do nothing to soothe the girl's agony. Suzun glared at her, filled with resentment. You had everything I ever wanted, and yet you threw it all away for someone who isn't even worthy. Her eyes burned with fury. She had lost control. With a swift motion, she tore away the cloth covering her crimson eye. A dark rage surged within her. How long do you plan to make me a fool? Suzun screamed. Shirayuki tried to speak, but Suzun's gaze turned ice cold. Shut your damn mouth, she snarled. From the shadows, the demon smirked. Seizing the opportunity, she deceived your brother, humiliated him, made him suffer. She turned him into a laughingstock. The demon's words slithered into Suzun's mind like poison. Fueling her anger, Shirayuki desperately tried to reason with her. Don't listen to them, Suzun. But the truth was plain to see. Suzun had already made her choice. The demon leaned in, whispering in her ear, if only this wretched woman disappeared, your brother would be so much better off. Those words were the final spark. A dark force erupted from within Suzun. Shadows swirled around her, Engulfing the shrine in darkness, she was no longer the innocent girl she once was. She had transformed. A grown, twisted version of herself now stood before them. Shrouded in an ominous aura, hatred burned in her eyes as she turned to Shiryuki. "You should just die," sensing the overwhelming danger. Kiyomasa tried to draw his sword, but before he could react, the demon kicked him away effortlessly. "This is a matter between women. Stay out of it." His sword clattered to the ground. The demon grinned. "Suzune, use this. Wouldn't it be fitting for her to die by the very blade she worships?" With that, the demon dragged Kiyomasa away, leaving Shiryuki defenseless. Suzune picked up the sword at that moment. Genta arrived, kicking down the door. His eyes darted around, searching for danger. He saw Kiyomasa unharmed. Merely at sword point, Kiyomasa ran toward Genta, clinging to him in fear, and then blood sprayed through the air. A deep crimson painted the ground. Shiryuki's head had been severed. Genta stared in horror. His mind struggled to process what had just happened. In his arms lay only Shiryuki's lifeless, headless body. His heart clenched in agony. When Genta turned around, he saw Suzune holding a sword in her right hand and Shiryuki's severed head in her left. Beautiful memories of Shiryuki flashed through his mind, but before him stood his crazed younger sister, stabbing the lifeless body repeatedly. Genta gripped his sword tightly, his gaze turning cold and resolute. Without hesitation, he charged straight at Suzune. Swinging his blade, Suzune dodged and looked at him, her face filled with grievance. "Why are you attacking me? Brother, are you all right?" "It's me, your sister." Hearing her sweet voice, Genta confirmed that she truly was his sister. He lowered his sword slightly and asked, "Why did you do this to Shiryuki?" Suzune seemed confused by his pained expression. "I killed the princess and the shrine maiden. You should be happy," she said. Genta was stunned. "What the hell are you talking about?" Suzune tilted her head as if he was the one who didn't understand. "I killed her because she married another man. She pretended to love you and then betrayed you. She was a terrible person and deserved this. So you don't have to be sad anymore, brother." At that moment, Genta realized that the little sister he had once cherished and protected was no longer the same. Yet, Suzune still pleaded with him. "Forget about that treacherous princess. She's dead now. You'll move on soon enough. I'm tired, brother. Just come home with me." Genta tightened his grip on his sword. "Tired? You massacred the people of Kadono, the village that raised us. You killed Shiryuki and destroyed everything. And now you just say you're tired?" At that moment, he finally understood. The Suzune he had known was gone. He lunged at her, fighting not just for the woman he loved but for the village that had nurtured them both. His attacks were relentless, but when his blade finally struck her, it snapped in half. Genta realized he had nothing left to lose. His arm began to transform, muscles tightening, flesh swelling like that of a demon. His eyes glowed crimson, burning like an infernal blaze. Suzune froze in horror. That same look, Genta had once gazed at Shiryuki with those very eyes. And now he was looking at her like that. Pain washed over her. Even her brother had abandoned her. She had always believed that, no matter what, he would stand by her. But now, if even he rejected her, then nothing mattered anymore. Her rage exploded. "This world, and you as well, I'll destroy everything." The siblings clashed. Seeing that Genta wouldn't strike first, Suzune took the initiative, plunging her hand into his stomach. But when she tried to pull it out, it wouldn't budge. Panic set in, and before she could react, Genta delivered a powerful punch, sending her crashing into the wall. Suzune stared blankly. He had never hit her before, no matter what, but now, Genta prepared to land the finishing blow. But just as his fist was about to connect, the demoness intervened, taking the hit in Suzune's place. She held Genta back and ordered Suzune to flee. Suzune staggered to her feet. Dazed, she looked at Genta one last time and whispered, "I will destroy everything, humans, this land, everything in this world. Don't forget that, no matter how long it takes. I will return to find you." Tears streamed down her face as she turned away. Carrying the severed head of the princess, the first mark of her new beginning, the demoness smiled in satisfaction. She had succeeded, more than succeeded. Her final task was complete. Genta, furious, demanded, "What do you mean by this?" The demoness no longer had any reason to hide the truth. "Time moves too fast. The light of human wisdom has burned everything away, leaving no place for us demons. If things continued like this, we would only remain as legends in old books. But now, I've created a new era." With that, she closed her eyes and faded away. Outside, the rain poured down, extinguishing the flames that had ravaged the village, bringing life back to the land. Genta knelt beside Shiryuki's lifeless body. Pulling the sword from her chest, he held her close, his heart heavy with guilt. How could he call himself her protector when he had failed to protect her? His cries echoed through the storm, grief-stricken. Shattered. Time passed. The village had returned to its former state. Genta packed his belongings, preparing to leave. He had come to terms with his sister's hatred one day. An elder, Kiyomasa's father, sought him out, learning of Genta's intention to leave, to train and hunt down the demon god. The old man sighed. "If what you say is true, then the demon god is your sister." A man hunting his own flesh and blood, you shouldn't let hatred consume you. Genta considered his words. Was there another path besides vengeance, seeing that Genta had not fully lost himself to hatred? The elder handed him an ancient sword, Yarai, passed down for generations. From now on, this blade belongs to you, the old man declared. Tradition says you must give it a new name. Genta hesitated. I can't accept this, but the elder insisted. Take it, otherwise, it'll just gather dust here. The sword masters are long gone, no one else can wield it now. Genta said nothing, simply accepting the blade. Then, the old man suddenly knelt before him. Forgive me, I am partly to blame for all this. He admitted that he had known about Genta and Shiryuki's love. But because his own son desired her, he had used his influence and bloodline status to force her into marriage. That decision had set everything in motion. Genta did not blame him. He simply helped the old man to his feet and left without a word as he was about to depart. Kaidaji sobbed. Are you really leaving? Will you ever come back? I'll always wait for you. Genta smiled. Make that miso rice cake for me next time. It was delicious. On his journey, he recalled his transformed arm and the words of that demoness. As long as 170 years,